Another running back that we're looking at in terms of injury, Derrick Henry. Now, we don't know exactly what the status is for him, but left practice on Friday, in a walking boot on Saturday. Mike Vrabel says day-to-day. They're being a little bit vague about it. We don't know if it's a foot or an ankle. Again, in a walking boot. This guy was just so fantastic at the end of last season. A star, helping fantasy managers in the fantasy playoffs. But he got off to a slow start. Keith, you've talked about this, about what Dion Lewis's impact could be in his second year in Tennessee. We know the quarterback situation as a whole will be better. Offense will hopefully be better, even though it's a sort of a retread of an offensive coordinator, not in terms of a guy getting a job again, but a guy who was on the staff seemingly forever. So Arthur Smith now is the play caller. Can Derrick Henry, assuming he's healthy, continue to play well? And how much does his injury maybe downgrade him in your mind?
Yeah, I'm not ready to downgrade him yet, and part of that is because of Mike Vrabel, who learned from Bill Belichick, just don't tell him anything about injuries when you don't have to. I don't expect we're going to get a lot of information this week about Henry. The information we'll get will be when he practices. I'm going to give it this week because it's the walking boot thing isn't quite as bad as it was, say, 5 years ago. It used to be you heard a guy was in a walking boot, he broke something.
Right.
Now they seem to use them more frequently, yeah, as a precautionary thing. So that's what I'm hoping this is. As of right now, I'm going to leave him right in that same low-end running back 2 range. I do think, though, even if Derrick Henry plays 15 games this year, Dion Lewis is a good value at his ADP.
Sure, there's no doubt about that. And I don't mind Derrick Henry toward the end of round 3 in non-PPR, or round 4 or later than that in PPR. And I'm going to like it less if he's still in a walking boot in a week. He averaged almost 22 carries per game in his last 4. How are you going to give a guy that much work if he doesn't have 2 good feet in July and in early August? This is nerve-wracking. And this is the Titans' offense. I'm going to want almost no piece of Tennessee's offense if Derrick Henry isn't even close to 100%.
Might be better for Corey Davis.
I was going to say, give me Corey Davis.
Yes. They'll have
Give him a
to throw the ball.
quarterback. That's what he needs.
They can't run the ball 25 times with Dion Lewis. So if something is wrong with Henry, this might be a boon for the passing game.
Yes, I kind of look at Dion Lewis as like a poor man's Austin Eckler at this point.
Yep.
You know, Eckler clearly has a much higher ceiling just given his circumstances, offense, and what we've seen from him. But Lewis, you know, again, if Henry is out for an extended period of time, you're going to see his average draft position, I think, start to climb a little bit, especially in a lot of the analyst drafts that we'll be doing. Lewis will start to get a little bit more love. I'm in love with this next guy because I think you look at last year, I was very excited about Kerryon Johnson's opportunity for the Lions. He had some good moments. Unfortunately, couldn't stay healthy, but he really started to get going right before he went down. But thank you, Detroit. Sorry, Theo Riddick, you get cut. He's going to find a job. He's already taken the tour around the NFL, stops in New Orleans, stops at Denver. He'll find a job probably before the end of the week. We'll talk about his fantasy outlook as that happens. But Kerryon Johnson now looks like the featured back in Detroit. C.J. Anderson is there, but 3-down opportunity for him. You're the pessimistic guy, so I'm going to Mr. Optimism.
Go ahead. Go right to him.
Go ahead. Sell us on Kerryon Johnson. Well, sell them. You don't have to sell me. I'm in love.
Yeah, 85 yards per game last year, sharing with LeGarrette Blount and Theo Riddick. Now, this year, he's still going to share a little bit with C.J. Anderson, but I do think it's sneaky how good of a situation this one in Detroit has morphed into. We used to joke when the Lions talked about running the football more, or we talked about drafting a Lions running back, but they've got a good offensive line. They've got an improved defense. They have a head coach and offensive coordinator that want to pound the ball in the run game. Plus, they have Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones that can beat you deep to keep opposing defenses honest. The sky is the limit for Kerryon Johnson. I've ranked him in PPR as my number 9 running back now, moving forward. And that's not, I don't believe that's his upside. I think you look at anybody on that list outside of the top 4, Kerryon Johnson could be the number 5 running back in fantasy if you play 16 games and everything goes right. The one concern you might have is the injuries. You just look at the rest of the names on that list.
Yep.
Who doesn't have an injury risk after Christian McCaffrey? They almost all do.
David Johnson has missed time. James Conner last year missed time. Joe Mixon last year and his rookie year missed time. Le'Veon Bell, we know, has missed time. Leonard Fournette has been injured. Dalvin Cook has been injured. It's tough to say that there's, not the same injury risk with him compared to other guys. He has just a little bit of a lengthier track record.
Except, right, he's got 4 injuries in his last 2 years. And listen, I don't like being painted as the pessimistic guy on Kerryon Johnson.
You're the bad guy, Dave.
I wish Jamie Eisberg was the head coach and Heath Cummings was the offensive coordinator, because then I would know that this guy would
their personnel moves are speaking volumes.
I wouldn't run near
their personnel moves. When Matt Patricia talked about who replaces Theo Riddick, he didn't just mention Kerryon Johnson. He mentioned the other running backs on the roster. He mentioned the tight ends. He mentioned the wide receivers. There's going to be a lot of fingers in this pie in the passing game in Detroit. And I think it makes sense for Kerryon Johnson to start and to be the passing downs back, but I'm not certain, A, that he can hold up to 20 touches per week, and B, that the Lions want him to get 20 touches per week. In our hearts, we all want him to get there. But I think getting him in round 2 opens yourself up to some risk. Late round 2, I can't fault you for that. But in the top 20, I'm not going there with him.
I want to agree with Dave on the part about them spreading it around. They're going to, but Theo Riddick was getting 70, 80 targets.
74 targets last year.
We never thought Kerryon Johnson was going to add 70 on top of his 30 last year and have 100 targets this season.
So he's not going to.
What we've heard prior to them releasing Riddick from 2 separate outlets in Detroit. One said 60 catches, one said 50 catches. On pace last year, before he got hurt, was 51 catches.
I've got him projected for 55.
He was right there to begin with. Right. Now, I take the over on that without Riddick there now. I think 65 to 70 catches is well within range. And so where they save him a little bit, I think this is where C.J. Anderson becomes a problem, is first, second down, maybe some short yard situations. So I think maybe his carries come back a little bit. That could be a problem. But you're talking about PPR, what his upside could be. His upside, I think, is an easy second-round pick now, and I think that, look, he was basically a top 35 overall pick right now. So you're talking maybe he creeps up 10 spots. I think that's easy now with Theo Riddick gone. Back into the second round, beginning part of the third.
Might have to take him a little earlier in the drafts I'm in.
Oh, same. Absolutely. 100%.
I hope the fantasy gods are listening.
And it's going to be interesting.
Put him up there.
It's going to be interesting to see him compared to the next guy we're going to talk about, is Damian Williams, because Williams is a guy you want to talk about injury problem. Last time he had the chance to be a starter in the NFL going into, not the season, but when an opportunity presented itself, was with Miami, and he had a shoulder problem, could not stay healthy, and eventually we saw Kenyon Drake take over. This was after they traded Jay Ajayi in the 2017 season, excuse me. So now you have Damian Williams, was fantastic at the end of last year and into the playoffs for the Chiefs, but he's hurt now. Soft tissue injury with the hamstring problem. Hopefully it's minor. Seems to be the case. Nobody's hitting the panic button just yet. But when you're talking about a guy that has no track record of being a starter in the NFL before, it is something you have to sort of put in the back of your mind. When they bring in a veteran like Carlos Hyde, when they spend draft capital on somebody like Darwin Thompson, it's something that we could see that the Chiefs maybe not necessarily feature Damian Williams to the level that we hope. We want to see him get the majority of touches. It just may not be the case if he can't stay healthy.
And we don't know just how healthy he is at this point. You almost have to put him in the same bucket as Derrick Henry. If he's still out sidelined for a week, then you know that there's going to be a problem there that could linger into the start of the season, and you're going to knock him down in your rankings. And at that point, yeah, you're probably going to take Kerryon Johnson ahead of Damian Williams. But here's a coaching staff that I can trust, and here's a running back that's put up unbelievably gaudy numbers when given the opportunity. We saw it late last season and well into the playoffs. That's why I'm buying into Damian Williams. And if you want to talk about a running back that's got a chance at 65 to 70 catches, in this offense, he's it.
Oh, yeah, I think he's one of the most difficult players to analyze this preseason because I have no disagreement that he has the same upside, if not more upside, than Kerryon Johnson. He could be a top 5 running back. You look at what he did in those final 6 or 7 games last year, it was amazing.
On pace for 27 touchdowns.
Yeah. He won't score that, but he might score 20 if he plays 16 games. I have a lot of fear, though, of him playing 16 games for a guy, when you look, just does not have the track record.
This is just a wet blanket over everything that we were hoping to see from Damian Williams as an Andy Reid running back. He's been a coach in the NFL 20 times. 11 times he's had a running back in PPR finish in the top 10. And that's, run the gamut from Kareem Hunt, who was the last guy to do it for him, all the way back to Deuce Staley, who was the first guy to do it for him.
But it's still early enough that he could shed the wet blanket.
100%. But again, the last thing you wanted to see is somebody in his opportunity have any sort of pullback on it, and so this maybe opens the door for Darwin Thompson, because what Carlos Hyde's going to show them. He's going to show them everything that he's done in the NFL, whether it's been San Francisco or Cleveland. Darwin Thompson, though, could make some name for himself, given an opportunity. So it's just going to, something you have to take into account when you're looking at Damian Williams. The Steelers, we know they're trying to replace Antonio Brown, 160 plus targets, over 100 catches, 15 touchdowns, and we were all hoping to see James Washington, the second-year wide receiver, take that job. Still may happen. But Dante Moncrief right now getting first-team reps. And when you look at it, just from this, taking a step back from what we want versus what the NFL teams want to do, veteran guy, probably a little bit sharper in his routes, maybe a little bit more trustworthy for Ben Roethlisberger, who he likes to call the offense coordinator of the Steelers. And so right now on drafts, average draft position, they're almost neck and neck, Washington and Moncrief. I think we're going to start to see some separation now that Moncrief is getting those first-team reps. Agree?
Oh,
yeah, you have to agree.
Absolutely. And I think people look at it and say, well, yeah, but James Washington and Deontay Johnson are so much younger and have so much more upside. And Dante Moncrief's just not that old yet. And he has not really had the chance to have the type of success I think he could have. This has, in the past, been a very consolidated passing game. It's 2, 3, maybe 4 guys at the most getting almost all of the targets. And if Moncrief takes this job week 1 and holds on to it, he's going to be a steal at his current ADP.
Right. I don't know if he's going to be a weekly fantasy starter, but we did have Bryant McFadden on our show last week, former NFL cornerback, former 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Steelers, and this was the guy that he said, simply because, again, he's the veteran guy. So for those of you that are looking to draft James Washington, we're not talking dynasty because I think that value is still there for him. But if you're looking to draft James Washington, are we just deciding it? Or is this news telling us you move on from him entirely and just focus on Moncrief?
It's fluid. You got to wait and see what happens in the next couple of weeks. That's why you can't buy into a training camp report or two at the other of training camp. You just have to see what happens.
But this isn't a report. This is actual what's happening on the field.
Sure, that he's running with the first team. But
playing with
you
the
don't
first
see
team.
other guys get a chance to work with the first team as camp goes along?
100%. But this is a guy that flopped as a rookie. And to Heath's point, they only usually use 1 or 2 guys. So for him to, get numbers and be productive when you have on the same field with Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, not realistic. But now there's an opening. And so this is the first guy that we're seeing taking advantage of the opening. And to your point, Heath, he's not that old. He had a chance once upon a time with Andrew Luck. Now, that was the year that Luck got hurt, so we didn't really get to see the full, what maybe capacity that Dante Moncrief could be. And then he goes to Jacksonville. Obviously not necessarily the best passing game with Blake Bortles. This is, as Bryant McFadden said, the best quarterback he's ever played with. Debate how you want to, where they are NFL-wise, Roethlisberger and Luck. It's maybe his best situation.
How about the last 2 years? Dante Moncrief has just over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. Look at who he caught passes from. In Indianapolis, it wasn't Andrew Luck. It was Jacoby Brissett. And then last year in Jacksonville, it was Blake Bortles and Cody Kessler. Right now, he's developing that chemistry with Big Ben. I'd love to see it continue. Hopefully he still has this job as the first-team wide receiver, and he'll be great as a bench receiver in fantasy.
And to your point, Heath, his ADP about 125th overall right now. That's going to probably get closer to top 100 very, very soon. The Giants have a wide receiver problem. I don't know who's healthy at this point. I don't think the Giants know who's healthy at this point. So you have Sterling Shepard already dealing with the broken thumb. We broke that down last week. Now you have the Golden Tate suspension. Suspended for 4 games. He's going to appeal it. We'll see how that works. Typically appeals don't necessarily work so much in the player's favor. Maybe he gets knocked down a game or 2, but he's going to miss some time. And then Corey Coleman also dealing with an ACL tear. They have Cody Latimer on the roster. They drafted Darius Slayton in the 5th round. And so now you have this Giants receiving core. Not that Shepard's going to miss extended time. He may be back for week 1. But this opens the door for more work for Saquon Barkley, more targets hopefully for Evan Ingram. Those are the 2 Giants that are being drafted in a lot of leagues. When you look at this receiving core right now, is Golden Tate still worth drafting? Let's assume it's a 4-game absence. And how much does this maybe improve things for Sterling Shepard?
If I'm drafting today, I do think Tate is worth a 12th or 13th round pick because there's some chance that we're not going to see him suspended. I agree with you. I don't think it's a very good chance. But if ever someone was going to win one of these appeals, it sounds like it might be him in this situation. The guy that I really moved up over the weekend, and yeah, I know he's got a hurt thumb right now, but Sterling Shepard, everything the Giants have said since he got hurt indicates to me that they fully expect him to be ready for week 1. If he gets to start the season with 4 games and no Golden Tate, I feel much more confident in him being the number 1 in this offense over the rest of the season. I kind of had these 2 guys really close in terms of targets. Now I've got Shepard around 120, 900 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think he's a viable number 3 wide receiver.
And he's running routes right now. He's just not catching passes.
Right.
His legs still work just fine, so he'll be in shape, ready to go for the start of the season. And I was on Team Shepard to begin with in this great Giants wide receiver battle. I think he's a great bench wide receiver. You're going to get him in maybe round 7, late round 7, probably.
His ADP right now is round 7, so I think it may slip a little bit just with the.
And that would be great.
It sort of goes, no pun intended, hand in hand, because you have the injury for him that may bump him down a little bit, but the suspension for Tate may bump him up a little bit. And again, Evan Ingram should be a star. He's been great every time Odell Beckham has been off the field. Last time I checked, no Beckham, and Saquon Barkley obviously has the chance to still be the number 1 overall pick. Just depends on who you like, comparing him to those other 3 running backs at the top of the draft, but still Barkley in line for a lot of targets. One other